Okay, folks, we're going to look at the accounting cycle for merchandising business, or basically just what is the difference between what we've been doing, which is a service business, and a merchandising business. And basically, you're looking at the difference between, say, a service industry like a plumber and the plumber, the plumber, what do you call it? Plumbing store, I guess, right? So some plumbers, and most plumbers, when you call them, they're not coming from a store. They have their own business. They go around the truck and stuff. They go and they perform a service. They sell their expertise to you to fix whatever problem there is. Yes, sometimes they do sell some other things as well, but for the most part, we think of plumbers as a service-based industry. The other one is like the plumbing store, where you would then go and buy a sink. You'd buy like a shower unit. You'd buy faucets. You'd buy whatever. You'd buy the piping. And then you go do it yourself, right? So you're actually buying the physical merchandise, not the service, but in this case, a physical thing. And so when you have things like that, you now have to worry about inventory, and that's one of the biggest differences, is the whole idea of inventory, right? So we're talking about like Walmart, great example, for instance, of a merchandising business. Okay, so how they go from there, we're not going to worry too much about this, but basically sometimes you have wholesalers or manufacturers that sell directly to retailers, and then the retailers sell to you. So again, I'm just going to stay with the whole sales motif thing, that most companies that make chainsaws don't sell them themselves. You know, they sell them in particular stores that are official dealers, or they might sell them in big chain stores like Home Depot might have an exclusive on a certain kind of chainsaw, things like that, right? So that's a manufacturer selling their goods to the retailer, and then the retailer sells it to the consumer, and the consumer is the one who actually uses it, right? They don't go around selling it after that. And then, of course, you can actually, in some cases, you can go right to the wholesaler or the manufacturer. Wholesaler is a person who sells bulk, right? So, for instance, your grocery stores, they have a wholesaler. Their parent company is a wholesaler that then delivers the groceries to the store, right? They set up the distribution networks that get the food on the shelves. The example here, Dell Computers, again, that's a manufacturer. Well, it's not a manufacturer per se, because you're not buying it from Honduras or wherever it's built, but they are the wholesaler of Dell Computers, and they sell all sorts of kind of computers. You can buy them directly from Dell, or you can arrange through different channels to get them as well. Okay, so what have you got? So merchandise inventory, that is starting with the inventory at the beginning of the year. Then you go to how much do people purchase throughout the year, so that's a negative, right? And then returns from customers is a positive, depending on, again, what you're actually looking at. And then that's going to equal your ending at the end. So what you started with, subtract what people bought, add back what people returned. You'd also add purchases, and then you end up with the total at the end, right? Total at the end of that. Okay. Businesses in general, this is a regular formula. You've got your revenue, so that's all the stuff that you've sold, minus the expenses, so the amount it costs you to get that revenue out. There's all kinds of different kinds of expenses that we looked at, and that's going to equal your net income. We've done this on the income statement, right? That's how. In a merchandising business, however, you have to do your revenue minus the cost of goods sold equals gross profit. So revenue, again, that's your sales. Okay, your cost of goods sold, that means how much did the item cost the business. Okay, so for instance, let's say we're selling golf clubs, right? And so the golf clubs sold for $400, but really the manufacturer or the store bought them for $150, right? So if they sold them for $400, that is going to be, right, so we got, let's write that down. So 400 minus the 150 the actual paid. So their gross profit is 250, right? They're going to start with 250 minus the expenses, so that could be things like shipment, paying the person who sells them, all that kind of stuff. Let's say it's extra $100. That would be advertising, all sorts of things like that. So off of that, they get 150 net income. That's actually huge. Wait, yeah, that would be huge of a turnaround. But anyway, that's the idea, right? So your cost of goods sold now factors into what's called gross profit. Gross profit, by the way, right? Gross versus net profits. So gross is the total before expenses, and then this net is after expenses. I think we've discussed that one before. Okay, so here's example, for instance. So we had a revenue of the year of $56,000. The cost of goods sold that year was $34,000, so you end up with a gross profit of $22,000. So again, this is how much it costs you to have to buy the inventory. This is what you sold it for. This is your gross profit. So then you take your gross profit, you minus the expenses. So their expenses to sell that thing, whatever it was $12,600, and you end up with a net income, so after expenses, of $9,400 there. Okay. So you can check that out in the textbook right there. But basically, cost of goods sold is total cost involved in purchasing the merchandise that's sold in the business. Basically, that's telling you, right, that's the price of buying. That's terrible. I don't know what I'm doing here. Price of buying plus like delivery charges, or some cases called freight. Sorry about the writing. That doesn't look like anything. In fact, I'm just gonna get rid of that. That's brutal. So, what was I even? That was so bad I can't remember what I was talking about. So, yeah, I think it was price of the price of the goods could be, and then plus freight, right, which is basically shipping costs or transportation costs, those kinds of things. There's other things that could be involved, but that's basic in terms of what we're looking at. So overall, your cost of goods sold, which is going to appear, by the way, as this a lot, COGS, and that's what that stands for, right? Cost of goods sold. So your beginning merchandise inventory, right? So that's how much you have at the beginning. So let's say, like, that's January 1st. Whoa, January 1st. What you have, and then purchase of merchandise is what you buy throughout the accounting period. And then the cost of goods sold So, beginning merchandise, so what you have plus what you buy equals what's available to sell, right? That, just think about that, right? So I have, 10 cars, I buy 5 over the inventory period, and that means I have 15 cars to sell, right? Then you minus the ending inventory, and that is the cost of goods sold. So the example I just gave was not in the cost, so that was in the total. So let's say, just using that, so I have 100 cars, I buy 50 more over the period, I sell 75, so my inventory is 75 cars. Okay, in terms of money, right, you could have $1 million worth of inventory, you purchase $250,000, so that's 1.25 million, you sell $750,000, you'd end up with an ending inventory. Would look at, okay, sorry, just did that again. What I mean is building, woo, let me take a drink, and I mean of water. All right, try this again. So I'm going to go back to the cars. So I have 100 cars, I buy 50 cars, so I have 150 cars available to sell. Then at the end of the year, I only have, let's say, 25 cars left. That means that I sold 125 cars, right? So the beginning plus the amount I bought is the amount I have. I don't even know what the numbers I just said. I don't think they are. Anyway, so this is what I started with. This is what I bought. So that's the amount I have. At the end of the year, you know, I have 50 cars left. That means that I sold 125. If you do that in terms of money, right? So let's say it's $1 million worth, right? And then I buy 0.75, so $750,000. Then that means I have $1.75 million worth of inventory to sell. And at the end of the year, I'm sitting on, you know, $500,000 of inventory. That means that my cost of goods sold, right? So everything I sold is 1.25 million, right? That makes sense. So I had after all the purchases over the year, you know, I would have had 1.75 million for sale. If I end up with 0.5, right? No, not that one. Sorry, this one. Holy monkey! Here we go. Okay. If I ended up with 0.5 at the end of the year, that means the amount I sold is 1.25 million. Okay, so that's the whole idea of that. I hope that was confusing because wow, I just whew. Okay, so other things that go into here: purchase returns and allowances. This is stuff like returning and sales of inventory purchases. So that is for if you buy. I'm going to get rid of that one. Okay, this is if you buy you buy merchandise, right? You're buying your inventory. So purchase return, right? So that's basically you know, could be like damaged goods, for instance, would go back. Allowances are, you know, based on, could be volume of sales, stuff like that. It could be a bunch of different things. There's a bunch of different scenarios. Purchase discounts. Let's say, you know, for every let's say for every $1 million, you get a 2% discount, volume discount, right? So that just means that if you order $1 million, you're going to get 2% volume discount. If you order under $1 million, you don't get this discount, right? So that's in there. And then transportation in, that's the cost of freight, right, or shipping. There are different forms of shipping. In this case, this is the amount that the shipper is going to pay, or the company that you buy from is paying. Okay, so what do these things do? All right, so when you return, your cost, total cost, purchase cost decrease. Total purchases decrease. That makes sense because you ordered 100, you sent back 2, you still have 98. So that means your purchases are 98, not 100. Purchase returns and allowances decrease the cost of goods sold. Okay, makes sense again because if you don't have it, you didn't pay for it to be on your shelf. Therefore, right, your cost of goods sold would be lower. And then, of course, it also decreased the cost of things to buy when you get a discount on things. So discounts also lower that. They are also lowering the cost of goods sold, right? So you just need to think about how much did it cost to get that item on the shelf is what this is getting at. Transportation, it can go both ways. Transportation in is when you pay for your freight into get it to the store, so you pay for your shipping, right? So that's added, makes the good more expensive. So the good is $100, $10. This is, you know, per unit basically. So per unit, it's $110 would be your COGS if that was your purchase price and that was your shipping cost. Okay, so That is that part. The other thing that I wanted to, I'm not going to switch over to the other PowerPoint, but I'll just go down here to a nice blank thing that I can write messily on here. And it's the idea of perpetual versus periodic inventory. So this is the next slideshow. And basically, so perpetual is continuous, right? This is always occurring. It updates automatically. Usually, right, this would be computerized inventory. So that's like any style. You go to a Home Hardware, for instance, you buy something that something that is countable because they have them all in the system individually. So, for instance, you buy paint. They know how much paint they have in stock. You buy a hose. They know how many hoses they have in the store, right? It's all computerized. If you buy it, it gets subtracted for their inventory, and they know about it. Periodic, while it's in the same store, if you think about it, right, this is things that you can't really count. So if you go buy a bucket of nails in bulk, they don't know exactly how many nails there are, right? Because you're buying them by weight. So if they wanted to know exactly how many, they'd have to count them, which is kind of ridiculous. They're not going to do that, but that's the way they would have to keep up with that kind of inventory. But a periodic inventory, that's for smaller businesses that are selling like concession items. So that's not supposed to be concession, not concussion. So concession items, like chips and gum and things like you could count them. In some stores they'd be in their inventory, but other stores they're not. And they every now and again they could go let's say on a monthly basis, and every month they at the end they would count up the bags of chips they have. And if they had let's say they had 90 bags of chips at the beginning, and after the month they count up the chips and they have 15 bags. Well, okay, so this is their updated amount, and they know that they sold or lost or whatever 75, right? So periodic, that is a physical inventory. That's a one that you're physically counting, and a perpetual is one that usually have a computerized point of sale system. Okay, so it's updated automatically. This stuff gets into becomes more important, especially in the grade 12 course. It's not as important in this course, but anyway, you'll see what comes of that. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too confusing, and yeah, you had an enjoyable almost 20 minutes. All right, bye-bye.